Jake Knapp is the inventor of the design sprint and the New York Times bestselling author of the book Sprint. He's also the co-founder of Character, a venture fund for early stage startups. How and why did you start using Miro?
I came from this position of thinking, I don't want to be doing stuff online, to thinking now when I do a sprint in person with a company, it's like, we're going to use Miro, even though we're all in the same room, because that's a better way for us to get this work done. As an investor, we're basically investing in their ability to solve problems. We're saying, we think this group of people is going to be able to solve a problem in a really great way and create value by doing it. And actually, you need to give people the tools that can help them make decisions, help them collaborate, help them visualize and see things in a different way. And Miro does all those things. So to me, at least as an investor, I'm thinking, give the team the tools that are going to help them think, that are going to make the most, brighten their skills as smart folks. And Miro is at the top of that list.
Edit audio.
You know, it is such an odd thing for me to look back on the fact that the one project where I finally broke through in my career was a podcast about LGBTQ families. I mean, I was basically standing at a bullhorn yelling about how I was this giant lesbian for all the world to see. And that may not seem like a big deal for many folks today, but I was trying to build a career pre-Ellen, pre-representation in the media. And for years, I hid, not only on stage, but also at my day job, because I was afraid I might lose my job. I became adept at dropping Indigo Girls or softball team references into conversations in order to see if somebody was on my team. But I was also careful to just be vague enough in case they weren't. I was able to hide. I was able to pass. Code switching was a choice for me, but that is not the case for so many other folks in the workplace today. Hello, folks. I'm Robin Hopkins, and this is Well Adjusting, where I talk to people about life stuff, but not in an NPR way, more like we're at the bar, and we're having cocktails, and I am getting into your business sort of way.
Oh, we love a cocktail.
Oh, and producer Steph is here too.
Oh yeah, hi, that's me.
Today we chat, code switching at work. Woo, okay, today's guest is a friend of Well Adjusting, Yaz. I loved this conversation with a capital loved. We started off talking about wearing black nail polish to work, and we ended up at code switching and the fine line between educating other people versus their responsibility to show up with some research and knowledge already in the bank. Now, this is a big conversation, so let's cut the lollygagging and get right to it.
So my background is working in the renewable energy industry. Everything to do with
lay
clean
folks,
energy.
is that you're an engineer?
Yeah, I am an engineer. My title is a renewable energy engineer, actually, currently. So I went to school for engineering. So I'm very used to this environment of being in settings where people are generally not good at communicating, right?
Am I wrong? Is engineering, I know I'm about to make a sweeping generalization, but I do think as a lesbian who was once a phys ed major, that sometimes sweeping generalizations happen for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is engineering a predominantly white male industry?
Not a white male industry, I wouldn't say. Definitely a male-dominated industry. In first year, our ratio of men to women were probably 40 to 60. 40% women, 60% men. And then by the end of it, it was 20% women and 80% men.
It got worse.
Yeah, it got worse because when you're in an environment like that, you really start to reflect on whether you want to do this for the rest of your life, right? And it's really difficult to communicate with other engineers, right? So a lot of men in engineering come across very aggressively to the women, right? There are a lot of very awkward men constantly hitting on women. I think more than anything, that's what actually drove the women out.
Wow.
Yeah. At least this is from my experience, right?
Yeah. And are you I'm just picturing you being guys, come on, just let her do her job. Just take your hand off her ass.
I mean, yeah, let her do her homework, right? I actually once I graduated engineering, I was just I'm just gonna stay away from this. There's no point. This isn't the industry for me. The engineering that I did though was sustainable and renewable energy engineering. It was a very niche crowd.
Yeah.
because they were engineers, were very good technically, but they actually cared about the environment too, right? So like it was really nice to be in that environment for sure. But once I graduated, I moved on to policy. And once I went into industry, I realized that people value me for that engineering experience that I have, or that engineering education. And I found myself in these rooms with like these people who were making big decisions.
Yeah.
And I realized that at 24, I was advising them technically on like what they should or shouldn't do. And I was just like, I'm not the person who should be doing this. You should consult with a professional organization or something that have like research and like, you know, data to like back up what they're doing.
Not just your gut check.
Yeah, exactly. Not
I really
just me.
feel like we should make a right here.
Yeah.
What's so funny is the difference between you and me is that I'd be like, of course they should hear my opinion. Like, what an asshole I am. Like, you're like, I don't know, I'm not the one to do this. All right, people, raise your hand if you have ever been personally exhausted by email, right? Same, friend, same. We're all so constantly inundated with email. And if you're like me, going through your inbox becomes less about responding to everything and more about just finding a way to keep tabs on the messages that really matter, you know, like the ones from the school telling me my kids are in trouble that I get all the time. Anyway, that's where SaneBox comes in. Think of it as an EMT for your email. As messages flow in, SaneBox does the triage for you, sifting only the important emails in your inbox and directing all the other distracting stuff, you know what I'm talking about, into your Sane Later folder. So you know what messages you need to pay attention to now and what stuff you can get to like, you know, like eventually after maybe a nap or, I don't know, a cocktail. It also, and I know I'm waxing poetically, but it has some very handy features like the Sane Black Hole, where you can drag messages from annoying senders that you never want to hear from again. Bye, friend. Oh, and it also has Sane reminders to ping you if someone hasn't replied to your email by a certain date. I mean, nothing like having to follow up on your follow-up, am I right? All right, best of all, you can use SaneBox with any email client or phone anywhere you check your email. I mean, come on. See how SaneBox can magically remove distractions from your inbox with a free 2-week trial. That's a deal. Visit sanebox.com/well today to start your trial, and you're going to get a $25 credit. That's sanebox.com/WELL. Go ahead, folks. Get it.
The first day I was working, I had to go onto a site where I was basically in the middle of Long Island, and I think Long Island is like notoriously known for like, you know, blue collar work, and so most of the people that I met over there were very just
not open.
Yeah, not open, and it was actually quite difficult to like, you know, fit in, especially because like I just come from another organization that was extremely progressive, Canadian, like based out of Montreal.
So this Long Island is where your job was based.
Yeah, so the first, like one of the projects that I was working on, that was going to be put on my first day, I went onto the site and I basically like had to interact with like subcontractors and like other people that we were working with, and it was just like, it's completely different because like I'm just chatting to someone and they're telling me about how like females who work at their workplace are just kind of useless and like are only good for admin, you know? And so when like things like that are being said to me, like, you know, I'm looking at my coworker for guidance because I was just like, you know, what's like our,
because
like,
personal Yaz wants
this?
to be like, are you fucking kidding?
Yeah.
But work Yaz has to look around the room and say, what is the response I'm expected to give?
Right, exactly. I mean, especially because it's my first day, right? So I'm just like, I'm not going to like partake in this conversation. So I just like stood there and just smiled. Yeah, exactly. Smiled and like nodded my head, right? And my coworker kind of chimed in, but didn't really
bitches
like,
and hoes.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like just very high level. And then like once he left, my coworker was just like, that was just so inappropriate. Like I just don't understand. And I was just like, okay, cool. So
So
I'm
you
in
were
a place
like
that's
at
not
least
terrible.
thankful. Yeah, you were like
Yeah.
at least thankful, but he did play along a little
He
bit.
did play along, right?
Right.
And then that's when I used the word code switch because I was just like, you know what, you do this so well. Like, you know, like I've seen you speak on meetings, like, you know, like during the interview and stuff like that. And he came across very formal. But like in this situation, like I saw a side of him that I just hadn't seen. I said to him, I was just like, you know what, you code switched so well.
Did he know what it meant?
No, but he was very amused by it. He was just like, oh, code switch. I've never used that word ever.
Oh.
This is such a great place to use it. So I mean, like it was cool. Like, I mean, I feel like still to this day, you know, like we've worked together for like 4 or 5 months. There is a lot I'm teaching him, you know, about being a bit more progressive, and it's really interesting.
So did you end up staying on that job? And if so, I want to hear, how did you manage those relationships? Because those people told you who they were right out of the gate. Like they told you that they're, you know, misogynist. They told you that they're going to hit on women. They've told you, and your coworkers, while they said on the side, like, oh, that sucked, they still played along.
Yeah.
So you now know you have to be a person that plays along with something that may not be in your personal gut check.
Yeah. I think I've always been a person as well that is generally in that position a lot, like where I am in front of people who think a certain type of way about, you know, the way that I look, but they like, I create a safe space where they're able to like share, like, you know, what their actual true feelings are.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you an example actually.
Yeah.
While I was working in Long Island, there was a point where I had to work with the security for one of the schools. Like the security team was probably like 4 or 5 people big, but the leader of the security team was coming in, like interacting with me because I was managing like everything that was going on the site. And they were basically lifting panels onto the rooftop. So like the entire area had to be blocked off.
Yeah.
And also like inside the school, just in case, you know, the roof collapsed for any reason, like we had to like
Let's
empty
not
out.
kill children. You know, that seems like a wise idea.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
exactly. So basically like when this whole thing was happening, the security person came outside and informed me that there was a teacher inside the school. So we basically had to like halt all activities, of course. But when he came to me, he was just like, oh, there's someone in the school. What do you think we should do about it? And then the crane operator was there with me as well and was just like, well, what does she look like? Because it was like, if she's attractive, like, you know,
we should be safe.
We should save her.
If not,
you know, if not, it's fine if she gets crushed, right? Like that. It was just like so
like a
disappointing
really nice
to like
guy.
see that this was said in front of me. Yeah.
I want to hang out with him. What's his name? That asshole.
It was really sad because there is a very small community of crane lift operators, and a lot of them are, you know, similar to him. You know,
And you're
like,
like, I don't want to work with that, but like you have to.
You have to work with that. Yeah, exactly. Like
So-
we were desperate also as well. Like,
So how do you write that for yourself? Like, what do you just put it in a box?
no. So like, I mean, you know, there were 2 things I could have done. Right. One, let it slide. Just like let them get on with the day. Right. Or 2, like actually report it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I actually let him get away with it because I know how difficult it was to get this crane operator over here,
Right.
And like how long it would take, how much it would push the project back if I actually spoke up about it.
Yeah.
You know what they ended up saying though? Like what came out of that was, and this just like boggles my mind that this was even being done in front of me, especially because like I was managing the site.
Yeah, I was
right?
gonna say you're the executive professional on site, and they're just like, like they don't care.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
a really weird sound. I just made him sorry.
The security guy came outside and was just like, on a scale of 0 to 10, she kind of looks like a coyote.
Holy fuck!
And then right after that, the crane operator was just like, oh, well, I guess you can stay inside then. And at that point, I was just like, all right, guys, like, you know, can you take me to her, please? And let's have her escorted out. And I basically told the crane operator to like, you know,
Why don't you take 5,
halt
but
the activities basically. But I mean,
I keep going back to like, this is your, like, the older I've gotten, the more I'm like, I'm spending so much time every week with these people. I care less about the place and the job. I care more about the experience and the connection with the people.
yeah.
And you obviously don't have that,
Mhm.
or you have found maybe pockets of people.
So what inspired me to go into this field, specifically into like the engineering field, was because I was seeing these decisions that were being made in political settings, and I was just like, I'm not happy with this.
Yeah.
And so like I would
A different type of slimy.
Yeah, exactly. And I do want to be like eventually be in like politics, or like be not necessarily politics, but like I do want to be in the political space. Like I do want to be in an environment like where I would be able to like create legislation around like, clean energy goals.
Sure.
And in order to like make like real impact, like I want to be able to like take my engineering experience and put that towards making sound decisions for, whatever like decisions we're coming up with in policy, right? That's where I want to go. And I was just like, I'm not going to be able to do that without engineering experience, because I do need to build like technical experience.
So you're eating it a little bit.
I am. That's what this was. And when I began, like I was just looking directly at the team that I was working with. And, in the interviews, like I spoke to everyone on the team. And everyone seemed progressive. Everyone seemed like cool. And, I was just like, I'm going to be here for a year.
Yeah.
Maybe 2. Can I suck it up and just like take it?
Yeah.
Like the salary was great too. So I was just like, all right, cool. Like, I mean, I also wouldn't mind this salary, right?
Yeah.
Like engineering salaries are decent. I was basically like, you know what, I'll suck it up. And whatever the environment is, like on the other side of this, we'll just deal with it.
I do think it's amazing what we as humans are able to put up with if we know there's a time limit on it. Like I feel like there's something in our brain that sort of just goes boop, and then you take that little piece of shit and you put it in a compartment that's over here, and you put a box around it, and you go, yep, no, but it's just 2 years, or so, just like whatever that thing is, you put it in a space so that you can deal with it. I think we have an incredible ability to rationalize things as humans.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, that's what I'm telling myself every day, right? Like at this point, this is like a place where I'll be able to like develop myself, and on the other side of this, I'll be able to reach my actual goals.
What do you do to make it right for yourself? Like, do you think about the future? Do you just think of it one day at a time? Like, what do you do in order to like?
That's a great question.
Thanks.
It's a it's a mix of things. I think like I definitely like I haven't actively given this thought, but I think I do take it day by day. I do look at my like daily tasks, and I'm just like, all right, am I doing what I wanted to do over here? Mm-hmm. And like, in some cases, maybe like 3-4 hours out of the day, I'm just like, yeah, absolutely. But the other hours out of the day, I'm just like, no, I'm not. And I'm like really trying to focus on the stuff that is actually like building my knowledge. I also do really value the fact that I'm learning something new every single day.
I remember when we did a pre-call, you like had like black nail polish, or you were talking about it, and like you were going to go into the office, and you felt like you had to take it off.
Oh, absolutely.
Because people would be like, what is he doing?
Yeah, so the office is actually quite empty at the moment. Everyone plans to come in for 1 day a week, and when they do come in, it's cool. Basically, like I'm just in the office with a bunch of white males. Like I don't think that in the office I've ever been with anyone like actually like one admin staff who was a woman, and that was it actually. Like I mean,
of course the head of HR was probably a lady.
Yeah, head of HR is
always
a black lady. She's a very recent hire, but before that it was a white male. Yeah, right. So I mean, like,
oh really?
Yeah,
usually it's
so
a white lady.
They're trying to focus on it, like, and when I say focus, I mean like
they have a DEI organization, and then that's it.
Yeah.
I went to an all-white high school, almost. I mean, there was one family, maybe 2 families, black families, and then maybe 6% people of color in my college.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I grew up upstate New York. It was a very whitey white place.
Yeah.
And now that I'm older and have thought more of it, I think of the pressure that those folks must have felt. Like, do you feel like as the DEI stuff is coming up, they're all like turning to you being like, do you want to run the organization? Or do you feel like that's not part of your conversation?
I think that I think that in environments like that, when you're growing up and you're just completely surrounded by white people, like I think that you start identifying with them, you kind of like, you don't really like see the difference between like yourself and them. It's very specific situations where it's just like there is a difference and people treat you different, but like you're with them constantly and like, you know, everyone treats each other the same,
Right.
generally, right? And so the time when you start to realize it, I think, is when you actually step out of that environment where you're just like, oh, I'm not around just like white people anymore, and you're just like, oh, I'm around other people of color as well, or other people who look like me. That's when, like, I guess, like, for me specifically, I was just like, oh, actually, I hear this person's experiences, and like, yeah, I realize, like, you know, this person has experience of microaggressions, and I didn't realize like how much it influenced them, and I was just like, wait, one sec, like that happened to me too. I didn't really like think about this, but it did affect me a little bit. It did affect like how I carried myself. And
Can you say more about that?
like when I'm like with all of my white friends, right? Like if we just go out somewhere, I think I was always ready to be singled out at some point, you know, like for people to treat me differently. It was just so normal that I was just like completely fine with it.
Well, that's interesting though that you had to become fine with it, because that was part of, you can rage against it or you can.
But like the thing is, like, how would I rage against it when I didn't even know how I was supposed to act, right? Like
Wow.
It was one of those things, right? Where I hadn't seen examples of this in my life. You know, I hadn't seen like the pop culture that I was exposed to did not address how like minority groups are viewed in like, you know, Western, like white dominant cultures. And yeah, I just like didn't really think anything of it. I was just like, you know, this is kind of how it is. We just kind of have to like suck it up and just like move along, you know, it's fine.
Yeah.
I think after BLM, like that definitely came up. I think someone who I really related to was Lewis Hamilton. So like, I mean, he really spoke up about this because he was just like, I'm the only black person in the F1, and I'm the best as well. Like he like, not in a boastful way, but he was just like, you know what, like people can't see him on top, and like it's something that they just can't fathom, some of them, right? Like when he was growing up, they were just like, oh, this like black kid who is not wealthy, you know, because like a lot of people who were like in racing, like whether it was like go-kart racing or whatever, like he was growing up with, there's not a lot of black representation because like, you know, it's generally like rich families who like put their children towards that, who can actually like afford the go-karts or like the other like, you know, equipment that's required for it. So he really spoke up about that, and all of that really resonated with me because I was just like, you know what, I have been in those kind of environments before, like growing up, like just been in like white dominant sports, white dominant places, just generally. And
I mean, I feel like you're just really spelling out why representation matters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So with Lewis Hamilton specifically, like the reason why I related so much to him was because he only started speaking about it after BLM. Like he's really started making a statement. And I kind of feel that too, because I was just like, I've never really been in a situation where like I've seen someone else react to this. But like now that people are actually speaking about it, I'm just like, yeah, actually, you know what? I've experienced all of those things.
Yeah.
And, you know, him speaking about that was kind of like, I mean, it's not like he was an idol to me or anything. But
no,
it was just
but it
like,
opened the door for you.
Yeah, it absolutely did. It absolutely did.
I think it's interesting, though, that you weren't even, there wasn't even an awareness for you until the door was open.
Yeah. And
then
I
you
think
were
that's
like,
how
oh,
it is.
shit.
That's how it is for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I definitely struggled with it a lot, but I didn't even realize it until like it was pointed out. Do you know what I mean?
What would be the perfect world that you would, how would you be if you weren't worried at all about what anyone was going to say? Like if you go back to the crane guy, like would you have said something different?
Specifically about the crane guy, I don't think I would have changed my actions in any way. I think people just have different upbringings, right? Like, and if I want someone to respect, like, you know, my upbringing and not single me out for the way that I am, I don't particularly feel like I'm in the place to do the same for anyone else, you know, like even if it is so wrong and like disgusting behavior, like their actions are directly impacted by like their environment.
I mean, it's the true definition of ignorance.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So like, I mean, I've always been a huge advocate for education, like and education reform. And I really think that it's very important to like, you know, normalize being in environments where you're not comfortable, being in environments where like, you know, your thoughts are challenged, like, or like this a curriculum is actually challenging like what
your foundational beliefs.
Yeah, what your foundational beliefs are and what your like cultural beliefs are based on like what's directly around you, right?
Yeah.
Like I've always like thought that's been really important.
You know what's funny is like, as like a person who's not a Gen Zer, I've always come from that place of like, I might be the first lesbian you've met. I mean, that's less so today, but when I came out in the 90s, right? I might be that. So I'm going to help bring you to this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I always use this Russian analogy. Like if I go to Russia, I don't walk in, speak English when 99% of the people speak Russian, and I don't expect you to know English. I should go and I should try to bring myself to you because you are the majority.
Yeah.
And I have always felt that same way about like being gay. Like I think that many people don't have that foundational experience to understand it. And part of my job is to help you because that's just who I am.
Yeah.
And this is why producer Steph has given me the eye, because I think that has really flipped now. And that's why I said the Gen Z thing, because I think there's a real like, no, you should come educated and you should come to me and it's your job to do the work. And initially I was really like fucking headstrong, like, no, fuck you. Like, and now I feel like it's somewhere in the middle is what's appropriate.
I've always been an educator throughout my whole life. Like I've always like, been in an environment where I'm just like, I have to explain myself because this is just the culture. I'm just from a different culture than you, like I've moved around and like, especially like at a young age, like kids don't really get it. So like you just have to explain it to them. Right. And I was moving around young. So I've always had to do that. When I moved to Canada, I really had to do it, right? Like I really had to be like, oh yeah, I'm from like an Islamic country. This is like what we do over there. Yeah, we fast. Yeah, we don't drink water like all 30 days, things like that. And being in this work environment in New York is really interesting because like, yeah, 95% like white male and the rest are a mix of people from all different backgrounds. But I'm still in a capacity where I have to be an educator and be like, okay, well, this is like my cultural experience, which is why I am doing this.
That does feel like a lot of pressure, though.
No, it's a lot of work, but I'm so used to it at this point. Do you know what I mean?
I know, but like you, this is like the third or fourth time that you've said, like, it's fine, or I'm used to it. I don't know that really addresses like how you honestly feel about it.
I have a massive tolerance for it because I'm in a professional setting. I'm at work, and so
you also just seem like that kind of person. Like you have a massive tolerance for me right now.
Yeah,
and I really appreciate that.
but the thing is, you're willing to hear, right? If you're willing to hear, I will tell you about it, and like I don't mind speaking to you about that.
Yeah,
right. I think it's my social circles where I'm just like I'm a lot less tolerant.
Interesting.
Yeah, because at that point I'm just like, all right. Like,
because now you want to be yourself.
I don't want to be your first brown friend. I don't want to be your first South Asian friend. I don't want to be your first Muslim friend. I don't want to be your first.
You're like this is like the weirdest analogy. You're like a contractor who comes home and is like, I'm not fixing the pipes. Like I have been fixing pipes all day long. I'm fucking off the clock.
That's exactly
like I am not educating you right now. I'm having a cocktail and I'm putting on black nail polish. Go fuck yourself. So you do know how you feel. You just have boundaries.
Yeah, I do. Like, when I'm saying I don't want to be your first like ex-friend, I'm doing that to people in like a very specific environment where I don't have like a built connection with them, right? Like if it is a friend of a friend, I will be a lot more tolerant. Like you have like your own like shading of when it sounds like you are the ultimate code switcher. Like from work, you have your line of what you're willing to accept. Personally, you have your line of what you're willing to accept. You're modulating all day long. And it's all relative to the person that I'm speaking with, because I want to be respectful of their background too, right? Like, I mean, if they have grown up in, a small town in Texas, then, like I don't mind like going the extra mile to like educate them a bit more. I mean, I feel like I'm a good judge of character. And if I know that someone's not like, actually taking in what I'm saying,
you can tell when a person is being voyeuristic and when a person is open to being educated. I believe
that's exactly it. I think it's just like, what is it worth at the end of the day, right? Like, I mean, like, what am I achieving at the end of the day? And I'm just like, I have to think about this from my own perspective. Like, am I going to be able to like get through this? Yes, I will be fine if I don't do anything about it. If I did report it, that makes heads turn. That means that, our client has to get involved, which they don't want to do. Our own organization would slap me on the wrist as a result as well, because they'd just be like, why are you making a big deal about this?
Don't make waves.
Yeah, why are you making waves?
You just called that bitch ugly. What's the problem?
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, you just came onto this job, right? Like, we just need you to execute what's happening. Like, get the work done. Don't cause any issues with the client. And let's just like get a good review, like get a reference and move on so we can get more jobs in the future. Right. And you know what? Like in that situation, like 100 times over, I would have absolutely done the exact same thing that I just did.
Eyes on the prize. I'm going to be making climate policy change that's going to affect millions of people.
Yeah.
That one asshole is going to be an asshole his whole life.
Yeah. I mean, if it's someone who is on the same team as me, and they said something out of line like that, and I'm managing that, I'm having a conversation with you to shut that shit down.
You're going to the lady in HR and you're saying, handle this.
I'm not even going to HR. Like, I think what I want to first do is I want to actually have a conversation with them and just tell them like about how what they did was wrong and how we should not be represented as an organization. I am an educator. I recognize that, and I would want to do that first because
they do say in any work situation, you should first try to sort it. You don't automatically escalate to the boss. I mean, that is like proper protocol in work, generally speaking. So you try to work it out with the person. And then if they show it again, then you go above them.
I think there's a higher chance of getting hostility from that person if I report them to HR and they wouldn't actually take that information in a positive way. They would, in fact, turn around and just be like, all right, cool, you said that. I'm going against that because that's what got me in trouble.
Yeah.
So in that situation, I'd absolutely address it.
Yeah.
So that's a very specific work situation thing, right? The situation that we were in with the crane operator, unfortunately, was that this person was contracted by us.
Yeah.
Sure. But it's one of our subcontractors.
Yeah.
We're the contractor. And if we make a big deal about our subcontract, that's not something that gets escalated to the client. But if the client hears about it, they're just gonna be like, why don't you have your shit together?
Right.
Right?
Yep. I just am hearing that there's an awareness. If you're going to do this, if you're going to go into an environment where you're different, there's got to be an awareness of what you're about to walk into.
Yeah.
You need to make decisions as to what it is you're willing to accept and what you're not. What are your lines? And it seems like that needs to be really clear for what you're willing to accept and not accept.
Yeah.
And then you have to, it feels to me like you would need to be constantly evaluating. Has it gone too far? Have the lines shifted? Am I putting my needs above this? It just seems like you take a lot of mental processing, but you're going to constantly need to be evaluating.
And I think that's why I want to leave.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong. I've been here for a couple of months. I'm just I want to go to grad school afterwards, but I'm still thinking about leaving.
Yeah.
For another opportunity, even if it is for a couple of months, I just I'm not happy about that at all. It just doesn't is it going to look good on my resume? Those are all things that you have to think about, right? That's what the pressure is. But at the end of the day, I'm not happy in that environment. And I don't think that I can be of value in an environment like that, right? Every single time I interact with a person, I'm thinking about what their background is culturally.
Yeah.
And I'm adjusting myself so that I can speak to them. I don't want to have to be able
such
to
a weight though. Yes.
Yeah. I don't want to have to do that. The thing is, I think I always frame it in the positive because I always feel like I'm in control of my actions, right? I'm participating in this because I want to. I am in the situation because I put myself in it, and that is, I think, what's allowing me to get through it. If I was a passive participant, I wouldn't survive. I know I would not survive. I've been in work environments like that before and I've left, right?
Yeah.
And I see these other people that I work with who are also part of a minority group. And I just see how passive they are. I'm just I could not be you.
Yeah.
I don't know how you're taking all of this. But hey, if all that matters to you is getting that paycheck, then your priorities are different to mine, right?
Do you ever consider just a complete change in direction? Or do you feel like that 100%. Would be I gave up or?
No, sometimes, no. I wouldn't think of it as giving up. I would just I would just make sure that the next thing I do would be impactful, where I would be able to create a difference in that area too. And even if I did go into a more diverse area, then I would still I think I would be challenged differently. I've always been in an environment where I've been a minority. So I think that's something else that is definitely on the horizon. I think I would love to try and experience that.
I think you're incredibly powerful. And I think the way that you're looking at it, the way that you're moving through it is inspirational to me. Because like you said, you're talking about a whole group of people that wouldn't be able to do what you're doing. And I think so many people don't recognize when they're not happy. And once you recognize something, you can make a change.
Yeah.
And I have all the confidence in the world, you'll make the right next change and you'll be where you should be or where you want to be or making an impact in a really large way.
Yeah, I think the way that I think about it as well is that, I need to know what the mindset over here is like too. That's a whole learning experience. That's entirely part of this learning process. I knew I was getting into engineering. I knew that this would be a product of it. I didn't know how bad it would be.
Yeah.
But it is absolutely still a learning opportunity. If I am in a place that's like advising policy and like, you know, I'm trying to work with engineers to figure out like, you know, what's best, I need to know how to communicate with them. I need to know the worst and the best that can come out of them.
Yeah.
And so like what I'm taking this as is a learning opportunity. I mean, I'm not happy, don't get me wrong.
But you're going to get yourself in a position of power.
Exactly.
To make change.
Exactly. It's not just like the technical experience that I'm getting out of it. Like I'm actively getting like people skills.
Oh my God. Your management
right?
training is like through the roof.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very satisfied with overall where everything is at. Like, you know, I'm not desperately looking for other jobs.
Yeah.
Because I still know that I can like.
You're still wringing stuff out of the towel.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm still learning how to like behave around these people, right? And like how to code switch. And like, you know, I can see that some people in the workspace are a lot more progressive than others and very respectful. But like there are some people who are just really difficult to get along with. And I'm enjoying that too, to be honest. Like I enjoy human interaction. I enjoy seeing like, you know, how ignorant people can be. And sometimes I enjoy playing around with that too, you know. Like I will just like, you know,
you fuck with people a little bit.
Yeah, I love fucking with people.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, I can't tell you how thankful I am that you were so open. This is an important conversation. You know, there's millions of people in that position of having to show up and work as not who they are, or like having to play to the larger group, which fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you for helping me through this. Like
I don't know that I
didn't
did.
even know I needed this so much until
I feel like I didn't help anything. We just made it messier, is what I feel like. But, you know, I mean, isn't that what it is sometimes? Like, I feel like that's the beauty of these conversations is like you're sitting with a friend with a drink and you're just like, let's like really pick this apart. And like, let's be willing to say the thing that maybe somebody across the table isn't going to like, and really talk about it. Like, I love that. And I think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, not every work environment is the easiest to be your authentic self. If you find yourself in a situation where you are facing microaggressions or outright aggressive actions coming at you, it's not a bad idea to keep a journal where you write down the details of any funky interactions. Now, I'm not suggesting that you walk around with the everyone's out to get me glasses on. Let's not do that. But if you have to escalate a situation to our pal Linda in HR, you always want to have the receipts. Simple entries, dates, times, and what happened are helpful when making a case. It's that time where we get some expert advice from our boss expert of the day. Take it away, Angie.
So for most of my career, I have definitely been in some form of a lesser represented group. I'm a woman in the workplace. I am Korean American. I grew up in Texas, so not a New Yorker. And growing up, my father, he is Korean. And one of the things he taught me growing up was, you know, you should think of your otherness as a power. Like you should think about how you can leverage your otherness to stand out. But with it comes an immense amount of responsibility, because if you are the one that represents a group of people, oftentimes the people you interact with will see you as an extension or a representation of a group of people. So my father simultaneously said, you have the ability to do an immensely wonderful thing by being different and representing, but you also have to remember that you carry with it an immense amount of responsibility. And so I thought to myself, how might I be able to just use that as being like, well, what other positive characteristics can I have it associated with that? Oh, this one Asian woman I worked with, she was really smart, or she worked really well with lots of diverse groups of people, or she was really helpful, or really friendly, or really inviting. So I think a lot about the ways in which I can add those other adjectives to complement that inherent perspective I have as being different from others. If you lean on this idea that we're not all a monolith, looking to a single voice, looking to pundits who are speaking to kind of provide a perspective, is also giving too much weight to a few individuals. So I try not to ask others for that, to say, hey, person of color, please speak on behalf of all of your people. What is your perspective? But what I do say is, you know, I want to get to know an individual and ask them what would they prefer about a situation. In the same way that, like, I don't think that all Asians speak for me, nor do I speak for them, but I would hope that someone would take the time to get to know what my perspective might be. When I encounter situations at work where I feel as though I have encountered a microaggression, I kind of try to take a twofold perspective. One is introspective. I have to then also ask myself, okay, how much of that was my perception of the individual speaking? Like, do I perceive that person to be sexist? And what is it about that interaction that made it? And what was overtly versus maybe subconsciously done? And what was it through so kind of implicit behavior? But I also then, when I think about how I externalize it and how I address it with my colleagues or others in the organization, I approach it with like three principles. One is I try to approach it with generosity to say, was this a misstep? People say awkward things, it might have just been a mistake. The second is this a series of patterns? So is it just one time? Is it 3 times? And is it also something that I observe this person or these people doing to other people? And then lastly, I do try to take a perspective of educating versus being combative initially about it. And I will talk to people, but I will present it in a way that isn't labeled and put people on the defenses, but taking it from a place of generosity, but also openness to saying, here are the things that I want and need. And then from there, I have had situations where I've had to escalate it, to which I will then, instead of addressing it with them, but rather bring it up with HR or my manager, mostly because in a workplace, the main challenge you run into is if people are not aware of the microaggressions, they may not also be willing to observe them or not self-aware enough to. And in which case, then it's not about the individual accepting that they can actually change those behaviors. You have to look to the institution to help reinforce the cultural behaviors that you need to see out in the workplace. And in many cases, it has to be structural. It has to be process. So if it's about the fairness of assignments, if it's about the exposure for speaking, then those kinds of things can be like on a rotation basis. There are ways that you can make it more fair.
I have no idea how I got so lucky with so many smart friends, but thank God they are available to just drop by this podcast and share all that knowledge. Thank you so much, Angie. Okay, folks, that is it for today. But before we go, I want to say so many thanks to Yaz for sharing his work-life journey with us. For more Robin, and you may need that, you probably don't need it, but if you do, you can follow me at Real Rob Hops on all the platforms, all the socials, as the kids today say. Well Adjusting is an Edit Audio original, exec produced by Steph Colburn and Robin Hopkins. Thank you to Maria Passingham, Kathleen Speckert, and the whole Edit Audio team. Oh, hey, before you take out those AirPods, this show is just for entertainment. If you are in need of help, please, please, please reach out to a professional. Go ahead and get that help. You deserve it.
Jake Knapp is the inventor of the design sprint and the New York Times bestselling author of the book Sprint. He's also the co-founder of Character, a venture fund for early stage startups. How and why did you start using Miro?
I came from this position of thinking, I don't want to be doing stuff online, to thinking now when I do a sprint in person with a company, it's like, we're going to use Miro, even though we're all in the same room, because that's a better way for us to get this work done. As an investor, we're basically investing in their ability to solve problems. We're saying, we think this group of people is going to be able to solve a problem in a really great way and create value by doing it. And actually, you need to give people the tools that can help them make decisions, help them collaborate, help them visualize and see things in a different way. And Miro does all those things. So to me, at least as an investor, I'm thinking, give the team the tools that are going to help them think, that are going to make the most, brighten their skills as smart folks. And Miro is at the top of that list for me.